No doubt about it. That's one homely piece of equipment. But when you consider the alternative, that sweeper becomes one beautiful machine. You can cover a lot of miles and clean off a lot of roadway with little problem. Little problem for you, that is, because for the sweeper, it's a rough, dusty job. A job that will soon put it out of commission if it isn't operated and maintained properly. Basically, the sweeper, or broom, is an air-cooled Wisconsin engine mounted on a steel frame. Most have a towing wheel like the one you see here. The business end is a 7 or 8 foot brush with long plastic bristles. No, it's not much to look at, but it gets the job done. To keep the sweeper doing its job, you'll need to check it daily before working, operate it properly, and perform preventive maintenance on it at intervals. I'll cover the first two in this presentation and take up the third in another program. Actually, it's probably better if you don't consider these two as separate tasks. Checking the broom each day before startup is really the first step in operating it. The daily checks can be divided into these areas: the walk-around inspection, engine checks, greasing, and brush inspection. First, the walk-around inspection. A quick look at the whole broom. You want to check its overall condition and spot any obvious problem. So look underneath for signs of leaks. If you find any, get to the bottom of the problem and take care of it now. Check the tires. If they look low, fill them to the recommended pressure. And look for any deep cuts or gouges. Also check the tightness of the lug nuts. It only takes a few seconds. Keep in mind that in the walk-around inspection you're looking for the obvious: loose connections, leaks, damage, tire condition, buildups of dirt, anything that would affect the operation or the safety of the sweeper. Tighten, clean, fix whatever needs doing, and do it now. All right, that's the walk-around inspection. Now for the engine checks. First, the fuel. You'll want to start with a full tank. Then check the engine oil. Keep the level between the full and add marks. Never run the engine if the oil is high or low. And when you add oil, be sure it's the right type. If it's been a while since you checked the battery, take a look now. Make sure there's enough water in each cell. Then wipe off the terminals and be sure they're tight. Just common sense procedures, the same care you should give your own car or truck. Next, check the air cooling system. Make sure the fins and the screen are clean. If not, clean them off. Then the air filtering system. First, remove the dust bowl and dump it out. Then remove the air filter element. Paper filters like this one should be tapped lightly to get out as much dust as possible, but never use compressed air to clean them. When the element is too dirty to use any longer, or if it's damaged, replace it with a new one. It shouldn't be hard to understand why the air filter should be checked and cleaned daily, and even during the day. Some air filters are the oil bath type. When they're loaded with dirt, the old oil should be dumped, the dirt should be cleaned out, and new oil should be put in. And that covers the engine. The next step is greasing. Greasing the sweeper permits free operation, prevents rust, and slows down the wear on pivot points. On a daily basis, you're responsible for greasing where the most wear occurs. Several points along the pivot bar, the U-joint at the end of the drive shaft, the pivot point at the bearing plates on the front hitch, and the front wheel. Of course, there are other points to lubricate when you do the PMA. Be familiar with the lubrication instructions for the sweeper you're using. And here are a couple of reminders. Always wipe off the grease fitting first. If you don't, you'll just force dirt into the fitting when you grease it. Apply enough grease, usually until it comes out of the fitting a little. All right, let's look now at the business end of the sweeper, the brush itself, and parts related to it. The brush is turned by a drive chain that needs to be checked for wear, tension, and alignment. So keep an eye out for excessive wear or damage to the chain or to the sprockets that drive it. Report wear before it gets too bad so that a new chain can be ordered in time. Also check the chain for proper tension. You don't want much slack or whipping during operation. When you depress and release it, there should be only 3/4 to 1 inch play in the chain. Occasionally, you may have to tighten it. And when you do tighten the chain, make sure that the sprockets are lined up to reduce wear on both themselves and the chain openings. The manufacturer's instructions explain how to correct any alignment problems. Depending on road conditions and on the manufacturer's recommendations, you may want to oil the chain periodically. Again, refer to the servicing instructions. Next, inspect the brush itself. Are the bristles in good shape, not worn down, flattened, or missing in sections? If not, better get the bristle rings replaced. Wear isn't the only way that the brush can lose its sweeping effectiveness. Storing the sweeper with the brush down on the ground, full weight on the bristles, will flatten it. And storing the brush in direct sunlight will make the bristles brittle and easier to break off. So follow good procedures in storing the sweeper and check the brush condition each day. One more point about the brush. For it to sweep effectively, its full length must come in contact with the road surface. This is a matter of keeping the brush level. Check for levelness from time to time, following the manufacturer's directions. So that's it for the daily check. Now on to proper operation of the sweeper. I'll divide operation into 3 parts: startup and hookup, sweeping, and shutdown. Before leaving for the work area each day, there are several things to do once you've finished the daily check. The first thing is starting up, to be sure the motor will start and run properly, and to check the brush controls. Tow-type sweepers have a control box similar to this one. So start the motor, and as you do, check the amp meter. It should show that the battery is charging. Now, with the motor running, check the controls and the working of the broom. Lower the brush, and then raise it again. Now angle it first one way, then the other. Check the beacon. Make sure it's flashing for the public's safety and your own. Then engage the clutch and make sure the brush spins properly. If something isn't working, you want to know it now, not after you get out on the road. One word of caution here. Always be aware of the danger posed by the broom's moving parts. Stay well back when the brush is spinning, and never get near it unless the motor is off. Having verified that the broom is working properly, you're ready to hook it up to a truck and head out to the road. So first, be sure to load the necessary work area signs, supports, and flags. And check the aero board on the truck, too. When operating a sweeper, you're always near traffic. Then back up to the broom and hook her up. Make sure the connection is secure and use the safety chain as a backup. Now before you leave the yard, be sure the broom motor is off, the clutch is disengaged, and the brush is raised. Then head out on a road. Keep your speed down to 40, even on smooth roads. And on rougher stretches, hold it down around 10. That sweeper doesn't have springs or shock absorbers to protect it. At the appropriate locations, set up the warning signs at both ends of the work area. Be sure they're secured upright and are completely visible to approaching traffic. Now you're ready to sweep. So drive ahead to the starting point, start the broom motor, get out, and set the clutch. Angle the brush to sweep in the direction you want the material to go, to the right, off the shoulder. Lower the brush until you get gentle pressure, and drive ahead. The pressure on the brush shouldn't be too great. In fact, if there's too much downward pressure, especially in heavy material, the motor will die. If it does, raise the brush, restart the motor, and lower the brush again, this time with less pressure. Remember what I said earlier about a level brush making full contact with the road surface? Well, a level brush and gentle downward pressure will usually ensure a clean sweep. But no matter how level the brush is, or how much downward pressure you apply, some material just won't sweep away easily. This compacted dirt was under a layer of gravel. More passes of the sweeper will be needed to get this area clean. So as you sweep, look back frequently to see if you're sweeping clean. The material is often heavier in intersections, but no matter where you are, check the results often. If you're not sweeping clean, try taking smaller cuts at the unswept material, maybe a half or even a quarter of the width of the brush. As they say, don't bite off more than you can chew. As you're looking back to check the sweeping job, take a look occasionally at the brush. Wire and other debris often get wrapped around the brush or the shaft, a dangerous or damaging situation. Stop if you see or hear any such objects and remove them immediately. Take special care when working through intersections, past ramps and side roads, to keep an eye out for other vehicles, passing you, meeting you from side roads, turning in front of you. None of their drivers would be too pleased to have you sandblast their paint job. And while you're keeping an eye on the traffic, look out for parked vehicles too. Before you get too close, raise the brush, move on by, then resume sweeping. And as for pedestrians, just stop and wait for them to go by. For non-moving obstacles, such as bridge abutments and railings, curb and gutter sections, guardrails, signposts, and so on, keep your distance. Running into them is no fun, for you or the broom. When you stop operation during the day, take a few moments to do a quick walk-around inspection. Check the tow bar connection, the wheels, the brush, and the drive chain. Check any connections that look loose. Wipe off the strobe. Clean the air filter if need be. And remove anything wound around the brush shaft bearing. Take the time to do it now, before a slight problem gets worse, or before a complete breakdown occurs. At the end of the day, when you return to the station, Take the time to follow this shutdown procedure. The basic idea is to leave the sweeper ready for the next day's work. So stow away the control box and the cord. It's a good idea to fill the fuel tank now. That keeps condensation from forming in the tank overnight, and it also speeds up things in the morning. And clean up the sweeper. Hose it down thoroughly. Considering the dirt it's been in, it deserves a good bath. 10 to 15 minutes of checks and servicing each day normally will save hours by avoiding breakdowns, and it'll keep your sweeper in top running shape to do the heavy-duty work it's designed to do under your careful operation.
Toe-type sweepers take punishment like this routinely. Imagine being dragged like this behind a truck all day. Well, it's not hard to understand the problems that result. Maintenance on sweepers is not just a good idea, it's critical. Both the daily check performed before going out to sweep and the periodic servicing done at scheduled intervals. All of this care for the equipment is part of preventive maintenance, keeping the sweeper in top running shape and staying one step ahead of serious repairs and breakdowns. What I'll cover in this program is the PMA for toe-type sweepers, the preventive maintenance scheduled to be done every 30 hours of operation. That's every 30 hours or less. Operating conditions may warrant a shorter interval between PMAs. The Equipment Preventive Maintenance Manual outlines all the checks and servicing from the operator's daily check through PMA, PMB, and winter storage. Refer to it often. The PMA is described this way: change the engine oil and oil filter, clean the battery terminals and air filter, and lube all grease fittings. Let's look at each in turn. First, changing the oil and oil filter. Be sure to have a bucket or pan to catch the draining oil and rags or towels for cleanup. The steps you probably know from working on other engines, even your own car. Drain the oil. Remove the oil filter. Install a new filter. Add new oil. So remove the plug and let the oil drain. Be careful if the engine's been running much. That oil will be hot. Actually, there's an advantage if the oil is at least warm. It'll drain faster and draw out the dirt better. Be sure to wipe off the plug. Metal filings tend to collect on it, and you don't want to put them right back in with the new oil. So while the oil continues to drain, remove the filter. First, be sure to keep the pan or bucket in position. You'll probably spill a little more oil when you get the filter off. You'll need the oil filter wrench to loosen the filter initially. Then just unscrew it the rest of the way by hand. Now, install the new filter. First, be sure that the seating for the filter is clean, free of grit and dirty oil. You don't want an oil leak to develop later when the engine is started. Now seat the oil filter gasket carefully. It's a good idea to oil it, just a little at first, to get a good tight seal. Then screw on the new filter. Hand tightening is enough. If you use the wrench, be very careful not to over-tighten the filter, or else you'll damage it. Put the plug back in once the oil has completely drained. Be sure the plug is tight. The old oil, by the way, should not be discarded. Put it with the other used oil for recycling. Finally, add new oil. Be sure it's the right weight of oil. Then start the engine and make sure there's no leakage around the filter. Watch closely for a few moments. It takes a few seconds for the oil to circulate into the filter. Finally, shut down the engine and check the oil level with the dipstick. And that's it for changing the engine oil and oil filter. Next, clean the battery terminals. There's bound to be a lot of dirt, as well as some built-up acid and corrosion on the battery, clamps, and brackets. If the buildup isn't cleaned off completely, the battery may discharge. Make sure that cables, terminals, clamps, and brackets are tightly connected. Looseness will make it hard to start the engine and add resistance that will keep the electrical system from charging the battery. Take the time also to check the water level. If it's low, add clean water up to the filler neck. The back of the Equipment Preventive Maintenance Manual has more information on servicing batteries. The air filter, as you know from the program on operating sweepers, deserves special attention, so make sure the intake is clean. For the oil bath type filter, you'll have to dump the old oil, clean out the bowl, and refill it with clean oil. For the paper filters, remove the element and tap it gently to knock out the dust. Now do this gently, and don't use an air hose either. If you put even a small hole in the filter, it'll allow dirt to get into the engine, and that, of course, means trouble. Be sure that you reassemble the filter properly and securely. All grease fittings should be lubed during PMA. First, carefully clean the fittings. If you don't, you'll just force dirt into the fitting when you grease it, and that's worse than not greasing it at all. Then use a grease gun to lube each fitting, including those on the pivot bar, the U-joint at the end of the drive shaft, the pivot point on the front hitch, and the front wheel. So that's PMA for tow-type sweepers, basic servicing that will help keep your unit working well. When you do the PMA, however, it only makes sense to check the sweeper generally too, the same checks you do daily. I'm talking about inspecting tire condition, checking wheel lug nut tightness, cleaning reflectors and strobe for better visibility, checking wiring for condition and looseness, wiping off any buildups of dirt and grease, checking the drive chain for proper tension and the chain and sprockets for condition. Inspect, adjust, fix, now. Be sure the sweeper's ready for the road again. And if you do the PMA inside the garage, clean up the area when you're done. That's your responsibility too. Timely and careful preventive maintenance will ensure that the sweeper keeps running properly.